Hey everybody, this is Fratum, and welcome to Linux Tips Episode 7, the LAMP Stack. What is the LAMP Stack, you may be wondering? LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Sometimes the P will stand for Perl, but in most cases it's PHP. What I'm going to show you today is how to install an Apache web server so that your Linux box can be used as a web server for development of web pages and web applications in the PHP programming language. We'll also have a MySQL backend for any kind of database stuff that you might need to do. This is kind of an advanced topic, so if you're still struggling with the other episodes and still learning how to basically get around in Linux, you may want to skip this episode. This is more of a intermediate version of Linux tips. So let's move forward. So first thing you want to do is log in. What you want to make sure, I hope you've been keeping your Linux up to date. So once you log in, you'll have a little status up in the corner or on your taskbar if it's down at the bottom. Make sure you've got all the patches up to date, and that way we're running on a good clean system. This little icon here that looks like a shield, if it has a green check in it, that means that you're up to date. If it doesn't have a check, then that means you should click it and run the update manager and get all your packages up to date. So that'd be first things first. So pause the video now if you need to update, and do your updates, and then come back, and then we'll continue. Okay, so now that we're all up to date, let's go to the package manager, and what we're going to install is our LAMP stack. So enter your password, hit OK, and the first thing that you install on a LAMP stack is Linux, and we've already done that. That's what our other episodes of Linux Tips was about. So the second is Apache, LA, Linux, Apache. So we're going to install Apache web server. So you do a search for Apache, and there's Apache 2. Double click on it. Click install, and it should go pretty fast. It's not a whole lot of stuff that it's going to download. You can click on the little gear down here to see what it's doing, and it finished even before I got a chance to see what it was doing. So now we have Apache. The second thing in this is the letter M for MySQL. So we'll go to categories, and under search we do MySQL and enter, and we want to install MySQL server. So that's the first option up here. Double click on that and click install. We'll see what's going on by clicking on that gear, and it's going to ask you to set a MySQL root user password. This isn't your system root password. This is the MySQL root password, which is basically the admin account for MySQL. So make sure you remember this password. So if you have to write it down, write it down. And it's going to ask you for a second time just to make sure you didn't make a typo. You'll need that password if you install any programs or applications that require a MySQL database. So it's good to have that tucked away somewhere so that you don't lose it. 95%. And it's done, MySQL server. Now we want to install PHP 5, and we go to categories again, go to search, PHP 5, enter, and there's PHP 5. Now you're going to notice something a little different in the description of the PHP 5. It says server-side HTML embedded scripting language, which is what we're expecting, but the new thing is it's a meta package. What's a meta package? Well, in Debian world, which is what Ubuntu and Linux Mint are based on, a meta package is a package that just describes everything you need to install the package. So to install PHP, there isn't a package called PHP 5. It's just a list. So to install all the components we need to run PHP 5, this meta package was created to tell the system what it needs to install. So you'll see that sometimes when you go to install something from the package manager that it's a meta package, and that's just so you understand what that means. So go ahead and click install. And PHP 5 is a module for the Apache web server. So that's why it's good to install this stuff in that order. LAMP is so that you have your dependencies met. So you already have Apache installed for this module. So it just makes everything a little cleaner on the install. We do need to install one more module that's not in that acronym, and that's the PHP 5 MySQL module. So we'll go back to categories and search PHP 5 again, and then it's going to say PHP 5 -MySQL, MySQL module for PHP 5. That doesn't come by default, so we have to install that. So double click, click install, and it's done. Okay, so now we've pretty much got our LAMP stack installed. The next step is we need to start it to get it running. So we'll go to our terminal. I have mine on my little docky here, or you can go up to menu and click terminal, or there's a little terminal icon right there. So there's my terminal, and I'm going to make it a little bigger so it's easier to see. Okay, so from the terminal, what we're going to do is we're going to start Apache. So we do sudo. Now the sudo command, basically when you run a command after sudo, that means run this command as the system administrator. So it will prompt you for your password. This is a security feature. So we're going to start Apache, but you have to be the system administrator or root to do that. So that's why we append sudo before the command. So we do sudo service, because Apache is a service. So the command service is how we talk to services, how we can start them and stop them and see their status, etc. So Apache 2, and then what we want to, so that's the service name, and what we want to do is we want to start it. Start, and it's going to ask for my password. Starting web server, Apache 2. So there, we now have a web server. The next thing we can do is just check and see if it worked. Now, a basic part of networking, all computers have a default address of 127.0.0.1, or localhost is the name. And even Windows has it. Every computer that's on a network, that address will point right back to itself. So we know that to check to see if we have a web server on here, that we can do that address, 127.0.0.1. And there we go. We got the Apache welcome screen. This is the default page that comes up when you first install Apache, and it's showing you, hey, look, it works. And here's some configuration information that you may need if you need to change how Apache behaves, or even if you want to know where the documents are that you want to edit. So you want to upload your web page or edit your web page, it's telling you that it's in /var/www. So this is a good page to if you have access to a printer, print it out or save it. So now the next thing we want to do is go look at the files over there. So we saw that it was in CD. We saw it was in /var/www. So we go CD /var/www and then enter. Now we'll look at the files in here. ls-la. So we're going to list all files in this directory, and we see that HTML exists. There's a directory called HTML, and it's owned by root. Well, we don't really want it owned by root. We want to own it so that we can make edits to it easier without having to use sudo to edit our web pages. We want to be able to just edit it as our username. So we're going to change the ownership of that HTML directory to the account that we logged in as. So you do sudo chown, that stands for change owner, and then the login name that you used. I used Fratum, and then a period, and then the login name again, FRATM, and then space HTML, that's the directory name that we're changing, and then space -R for recursive, so anything under it will also be owned by us. That's a security thing of Unix, group and user ownership. So now we're going to change directory. Oh, let me show you how that came out. ls-la. Now you'll see that it's owned by Fratum, so it's mine. I don't have to use sudo to edit files in there anymore. cd space html. Now if we look in here, there's one file, index.html. If you've done any HTML, if you've ever created a page, you know that's the default web page. So that is this. That file is what tells the browser to display this. So if we rename that file, the way you rename files in Unix is you use the move command, mv. M as in me, M as in Mary, V as in Victor. So mv space index.html. And we'll call it Apache info.html. So now if we look in the directory, we'll see that there's still only one file, but now it's called Apache info.html. And if we go back to our web browser and we hit reload, and now we get an index directory of what's in there, because Apache info.html is not a default web page, but we can click it and still have our information, so we preserved it. Now if we do, we can create a basic web page using gedit, G-E-D-I-T, space index.html. This will load up our editor. Oops. And we can just make a basic web page here. Welcome to our web server. It is a lamp stack. Center. BR hello world. So we can save that. Exit out of gedit. Now if we list our files, we'll see that we have two files. We have the Apache info, which is that info page that we saw, and then index.html, which is what we just made. So now if we go back over to our web browser and hit reload, there's the page we just made. So we now have a basic web server. You can create HTML pages, simple ones like this, or complex ones like Apache info.html that, oops, A-P-A-C-H-E. Helps to spell it right. You know, this has colors and markup, so you can do whatever you want, even graphics. So the other thing we installed was PHP. So let's make a page similar to this page here, but gives us PHP information. So we'll go back to our terminal, and we type gedit. We'll do PHP info dot PHP files have to end with .php. PHP. That tells the Apache server that it's going to look for code, and it's not just going to be HTML in this file, but it'll look for the tags that tell it that there's code. It'll parse it. So enter, and we can do PHP files start with a less than question mark PHP. Enter, and to get the info page for PHP, you do echo space PHP info bracket semicolon, And to end our code, we do that. So now we hit save. And we can exit out of that. LSLA. We now have 3 files: Apache info, which we made with the move command, our index that we edited, and now our PHP info. And this, by the way, is the size. Big difference between the default page that came with the install and the ones we've just made. But we haven't made much. So now if we go back up to here and we change that to PHP info.php, you'll see now we have a page that comes up that gives us all the information on our PHP install. It tells us all the PHP modules. The Mysql module should be in there since we installed it, but it tells you everything that this version of PHP can do. It tells us our IP address, our host name, everything that's configurable. A lot of information here. It might seem a little overwhelming the first time you look at this, but in the long run, this information becomes quite useful when you're developing software using PHP and Apache. So there you have it, the very basic of a LAMP stack. This will get you started and give you a development environment for web development using HTML, cascading style sheets, and PHP. Also we have our Mysql database, which to start that is very similar to how we started Apache. From the terminal, you would type sudo service mysql start. Oh, it's already running. Didn't even need to start it. So we now have our LAMP stack server. This gives you an intranet web server. You can do whatever you want with it. A lot of people use it to share files on their local network. You can create web pages that have files for people to download. So if someone comes over or you need access to drivers, you can just store them on this little web server and make it real easy for people to get to it. A lot of people use it for development. They'll develop on their local Apache setup, and then when their code is ready to deploy on a live server, then they'll move it over to their live server. I do that a lot at my job. I run basically a web server that's identical to our production server, and I develop there. That way if I screw anything up, hey, it just messes up my workstation. It doesn't mess up our live server. And once I'm happy with the code, then I can move it up and it's all good. So that's why people would want to run an Apache web server at their home. I hope that you found this video helpful and useful, and if it was a little bit over your head, I understand. This is getting more into the more complicated stuff for Linux, but hopefully you got something out of it. If you're a first-time visitor to my channel, please subscribe. I try to do Linux tip videos once a week, sometimes every couple weeks. It depends on the subject matter. And give a thumbs up if you liked it, or a thumbs down if you didn't. If you have any comments, please leave them in the comment section, or you can even email me directly, fratum@fratum.com, and I will gladly answer your questions. I hope you have a great night. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.